Math 2, Unit 12B. Today we're talking about the quadratic formula. Again, if you are watching this video, definitely go to YouTube and find the quadratic formula song to Pop Goes the Weasel. It's the #1 song. Okay, anyways, one thing, so notice here, we have our quadratic function. Quadratic functions have x squared in them, okay? We know our a, b, and c value. You can only get your a, b, and c value, though, when it's set equal to 0. If it's not set equal to 0, you need to change things so that it's set equal to 0, okay? Once it is set equal to 0, then you're going to take your a, b, and c values and you plug them into the quadratic formula. Okay, you have to have this memorized. This is not going to be given to you on your test. You need to know the quadratic formula. Okay? That's why I suggest listening to that song every night when you're going to sleep. Okay? All right. Now. Okay, here's a review on completing the square. We know how to complete the square. We did a lot of that yesterday. Okay, we are not doing all of these examples. Okay? We are only going to be doing a few of these examples. We are going to start with the middle one. Okay, so on this first line, we are just going to do this example. Okay, on this first line, we're going to do like one on each line basically. Okay, maybe two. Okay, so is this in the correct form? Yes. Good, it is. Okay. So if you need to, and maybe some of you right now we should, let's write out that A is 4, B is 7, and C is -15. Now, a couple things I want you to notice on this one. Okay, you could try to go multiply over and see if you could factor that way. Okay, and actually this one would work that way if you wanted to. Completing the square is not good on this one because can I divide all these terms by 4 and get rid of my leading coefficient? No, so I'm not going to use completing the square. Okay? So you always kind of want to think through what method could I use. If no methods work, the quadratic formula always works. And so over here, we're going to, since we're not doing that example, we're going to write out our quadratic formula. So if you remember the song, the quadratic formulas, -b plus or minus the Okay, I'm disappointed that some of you,
Christian was making up.
yeah, Christian, everyone else was singing it well. Makes me sad. Makes me sad that you don't take this serious. Okay, anyways. So we have it written down, and really this is saying x equals. And we know that when we're finding these values, what are we finding? We're finding x, and specifically the x-intercepts, okay? And so oftentimes people leave the x equals off. You can leave the x equals off, but know that you are finding an x value. You are finding the x-intercept, okay? So we're going to take this information here and plug it into our quadratic formula. So we have -7 plus or minus the square root. And why did I put -7 here? It's -b. It's not always negative. It's always the opposite of what b is. So if b was negative, then this number out here would have been positive. Okay. The next part is b squared. So I have 7 squared minus 4 times a, which happens to be 4, times c, which is -15. And it's this whole equation divided by 2 times 4. So I'll sometimes use different colors because I don't like rewriting everything multiple times because I'm kind of lazy and I'd rather make it more quick. Okay, and so 7 squared is what? So I cross that out, I write 49. And you're going to probably want calculators, which is fine. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 times 15 is... Do you guys have calculators?
No, I want to get up and walk.
240 is correct. Now, is it going to be negative or positive? Good. It's going to be positive because you have a negative and a negative, which when you multiply will make a positive. Okay, and so this ends up becoming plus 240. Okay, what is 49 plus 240?
289.
49 plus 240 is 289. Are we okay with that? Yes? Okay. So that means right now I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 289 over 2 times 4 is 8. Good. It's okay. Okay. Now, in your calculator, what's the square root of 289? 17 is correct. Okay. How many answers am I going to get? 2. Okay, because I'm going to write this out. I'm going to have negative 7 plus 17 divided by 8 and negative 7 minus 17 divided by 8. And then we'll simplify. Okay, what is negative 7 plus 17? 10. So we have 10 over 8, and we can reduce that to be 5 over 2 or 2.5? Yes. 1. Yes. Nicely done. Good catch. Thank you. Okay. Or 1.25. Okay. Now, negative 7 minus 17 is, divided by 8 is negative 3. So that means for this problem, and we're going to cross this out right here too. X equals negative 3 and 1.25. So, Michael mentioned this was a lot of writing. I agree. No, there is not a shortcut. The thing is that
Is there only 4 problems a day?
listen, shh. The thing is with the quadratic formula, it takes work, but you'll always get the answer. Okay? You'll always get an answer. That's why if I can use completing the square or factoring, I'd rather do that than the quadratic formula because I think this takes a lot more work than the other ones do. That's my opinion. Okay. Next one, we are going to do this problem right here. We are not going to do the decimal problem. Okay? So, what do we need to fix on this problem? Good. Equal to 0. Now, with the quadratic formula, your x squared could be positive or negative. It doesn't really matter. But normally, if I'm going to move things, I'd rather just make my squared term positive. So I'm going to end up moving this all to the left. So I'm moving x squared, and then I'm subtracting 10. Okay, so we have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So again, you always want to make sure that you're writing these in descending order so that you get the correct A, B, and C values. Highest exponent to lowest exponent. So your 2 exponent is biggest, and then this has a 1 exponent, and this doesn't have any exponents. That's descending order by your exponents. Okay, what is my A, B, and C value on this problem? What is A? Yes.
If I like that way better.
Yes. Let's do it this way in notes.
Oh, yeah.
But on your, so Jessica just said, looking at this, we could use the complete the square method, right? Because you guys see how there isn't a number in front here? And so on your homework, it tells you to use the quadratic formula. You don't have to use the quadratic formula. Okay? You're going to get the same answer either way. It's just that yeah, the quadratic formula always works, but all the methods will get you the same answer, okay? Today in notes, though, we're going to stick to the quadratic formula because we just want to practice it. But in your homework, if you notice a different method and you want to do it a different way, that is okay. On your test, you could do it whichever method makes the most sense to you, okay? So I only care about, did you get the correct answer, okay? And do you have work that supports your correct answer? Okay, that's also super important. Okay. So, A in this case is 1, B is 3, and C is negative 10. So we're going to put this into the quadratic formula. We still have it written up here. And so whenever I'm using the quadratic formula, I always write it down to make sure that I don't mess up, but we already have it written. So what will be my negative b value? Negative 3, good. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so we have 3 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, times c is negative 10, all divided by 2 times 1. So now we're going to simplify. What is 3 squared? 9. And then negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and negative 4 times negative 10 makes positive 40. We add those together and it equals, very good. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49 all over what? 2. When we simplify that, what's the square root of 49? Very good. All divided by 2. Okay, and then you're going to separate this into 2 problems again, because plus or minus means there's 2 answers. So we have negative 3 plus 7 divided by 2, and negative 3 minus 7 divided by 2. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4 divided by 2, which makes 2. Negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 divided by 2, which makes, so on here my answers are x equals 2 and negative 5. Okay, any questions? Okay, this next one, we are just going to do one problem again, but I'm going to do this problem, the second one. Okay, so we're going to cross this one out. Notice this one says round to the nearest hundredths. We're just going to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, is this problem set up okay? Good. So what am I going to have to do? Very good. Subtract 8 to both sides. Okay? It always needs to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite this now. 7x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. What does A equal? Good. What does B equal? Negative 2. And C equals negative 8. Okay, I'm going to give you, well, no, we're going to do it together. Do you guys want to do it on your own?
Yeah.
Okay, when you take the square root, just round the square root to the nearest decimal because it's not going to be even. Okay? So, go ahead and try plugging this in on your own. Actually, let's just do the first step of writing all the numbers in, and then we'll check to make sure we all did it correctly. Okay, so when you plugged in your numbers, you should have a positive 2 or a negative 2. Positive. Why is it positive?
Opposite.
It's always the opposite. Very good. Thank you, Caleb. So b squared is negative 2 squared, and I'm putting the negative 2 in parentheses because I want to make sure that I'm also squaring the negative. Okay? Minus 4 times a is 7 times c is negative 8. All divided by 2 times 7. Okay, so now you can go through and start simplifying. Okay, so let's check this out. What is negative 2 squared?
4.
Positive 4. Negative 4 times 7 times negative 8, what does that make? Positive 224. So we have 2 plus or minus the square root of 228, all divided by 14. What is the square root of 228 rounded to the nearest tenth? 15.1 is correct. You guys think it's just 15? No, if you're rounding to the nearest tenth, let's look at this. So square root of 228. If you're rounding to the nearest tenth, you're looking to the number to the right of the tenth. And if it's 5 or bigger, you round up. If it's less than 5, then you take it off. So it is 15.1. Okay. So that means we now are going to write this as 2 plus 15.1 divided by 14 and 2 minus 15.1 divided by 14. So what happens for the first one when you're adding? Okay, 2 plus 15.1 equals that answer divided by 14 equals, how would we round that? Good. Okay, now what happens on the second one? Two minus 15.1, oops, equals that divided by 14. What would we round that to? Negative 0.9. Say that again. Okay, so that means that x equals 1.2 and negative 0.9. Any questions? Okay, this next part, we are not going to solve them, but I want to talk about them. So, looking at this first example, I just want us to talk about what method we think may be the easiest to solve here and use. Good. Get the square by itself. Because do you see how, I'm going to put and solve. Do you see how you only have a square in this problem? There's no like plain W or plain X term. So the easiest thing would be to get the W by itself. And you would do that by doing what? Divide by 3 and then square root of both sides. And anytime you take the square root, the answer is very good. Okay. This next one. When I first look at this, I'm like, okay, there's a coefficient in front. If I try to divide everything by 3, it's not going to divide out evenly. So completing the square is not going to be good. Okay? Now, if I wanted to just factor, I would go over by 3 and I would get negative 12 for my multiplication number. So going through all the multiplication numbers, are there any numbers that will multiply, that multiply to be negative 12 that could add to be 2? No, because you have 1 and 12, you have 2 and 6, you have 3 and 4. None of those can make a 2. Do you guys agree? So that means since both methods that we know will not work, the only thing left is to do what? So this one I would use the quadratic formula. Does that make sense, the thought process that goes in there? Okay. What would you need to do this one first? You'd have to first subtract 10, correct? And so we'd have 3p squared plus 4p minus 10 equals 0. So again, I can't do completing the square because I'd have to divide everything by 3 and it won't work out. So let's check though. Could I do my factoring method? 3 times negative 10 makes, okay, so let's check all the numbers that multiply to be negative 30. We have 1 and 30. We have 2 and 15. We have 3 and 5. 4, oh my goodness, 3 and 10. 4, does 4 work? No, does 5 work? Okay, do any of those make 4? You guys are fine, come in, just wait 1 second. Okay, so none of those work. So that means, you're good, it's fine, promise. So what method would I have to use? Good, quadratic. Okay, look at this next one and decide as a group which one you would use. Oh my goodness. There's so many of you. Okay, so I'll just explain. Okay, so go through, you guys want to make sure it has the right picture, okay? And then you want to make sure the information's correct. If anything's changed, cross it out, write it, and then hopefully get it all updated, okay? And then will you just initial so that I can check it? And so you guys can just take it and pass it. There's actually though, I don't think you guys take the pages out, there's a number. So you could take your page out and then put it all back together. Okay, and here's one pen, but you'll have to share, or I have more, you guys. I'll grab some. Okay. Or yeah, you guys can just go in the hallway. That sounds good. All right. Okay, so what did you guys decide on this next one? Factoring would work? Would factoring work?
Yes.
I think a different method would be good. But you know what? You're right. It would work. Yes. Because this, you need to first do what? When I first saw this one though, and it's up to you on what you do, but I was like, oh, completing the square would work. It's already set up for completing the square. So you could do factoring or completing the square. Okay. Do we have any, are we kind of understanding? Yes? Okay. Turn the page. We are just going to do a couple more problems. In fact, we're just going to do 2 on this page. Do we want to do Linda shooting an arrow?
Yeah.
Or baseball?
Linda.
Okay, Linda. I guess you guys didn't know this, but Linda's into archery. She's amazing. Okay, so she shoots an arrow at a target, and the arc on the arrow can be modeled by this equation right here. Okay? So, where x is the horizontal distance in meters, and Linda and y is the height in meters of the arrow. How far from Linda does the arrow hit the crayon? So I'm going to draw this amazing picture of Linda. Okay. Well, we're going to find out. She's going to figure it out. So there she is.
Just like
And she shoots the arrow, and it hits the ground at a certain point. What? She has a star in her hair. There we go. I can't do bows. There we go. Obviously, I'm not into archery. Okay? Okay. Please be impressed. Okay, now, what do these represent? Like in the math world, what do these represent? When it hits the ground, that's going to be what? It's going to be your x-intercept, right? Okay, now, looking at this equation, to find your x-intercept, what would be the easiest method? I would say the easiest method would probably be the quadratic formula. Okay? So since that's what we're doing today, we're going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula. Okay, so with this problem, what is A? Negative 0.02. B is 0.65. C is 4. Okay, so negative B is going to be negative 0.65 plus or minus the square root of 0.65 squared minus 4 times A is negative 0.02 times C is 4, all divided by 2 times negative 0.02. Now, a few things to think about in terms of when we're finding this answer. Can a distance be negative? No. So when we're finding our solutions, if we're going to get a negative answer, we know that one we can just forget about because we're not going to get a negative distance. Okay. So in your calculators, if you squared 0.65, you would get 0.42. But double check that I'm correct. Am I correct? Okay, good. Because we're rounding, oh, you know what, we'll just do 0.42. We'll do the hundredths place right now to be a little bit more accurate. Okay, then in your calculators, first of all, negative 4 times a negative 0.02 times 4, two negatives will end up making a, and so we multiply and you get 0.32. And then you add 0.32 plus 0.42 and you get 0.74. Am I going too fast? Okay, check the numbers, make sure we're right.
Wait, so negative
4 times 4 is 16, and then 16 times 0.02.
16 0.32.
Good. And so then we added those together and get 0.74. Okay, so this is under the square root. Are you guys okay right now? We're just going to go ahead and take the square root of 0.74. And what does that equal?
Nope. 0.88 or 9.9.
I'm going to do 0.86 right now. If you did 0.9, it's fine. Okay, so when I write this out, I have negative 0.65 plus or minus 0.86 all divided by, and what's 2 times negative 0.02? It should be negative 0.04. Thanks. Okay, so in your calculator, or if I were to go through this, if I have negative 0.65 minus 0.86 divided by negative 0.04, will that end up giving me a positive answer? Yes, so let's figure this one out. You end up with negative 1.51 divided by negative 0.04, and when you type that in, 37.75 meters. That's pretty amazing, Linda. Okay. Okay. Now, if I use the other equation and I go negative 0.65 plus, plus 0.86 divided by negative 0.04. When I subtract from the top, I'm going to get a positive divided by a negative, which will give me a negative. So I'm going to cross this out, and we're just going to make a note to ourselves. Can't be a negative distance. Okay. Any questions?